Betrayal rarely looks the way people expect it to. It is not always explosive or dramatic, and it does not always come from someone openly hostile. Most of the time, betrayal arrives quietly, without warning, wrapped in familiarity. It comes from someone you trusted, someone who once promised loyalty, someone who knew your boundaries and crossed them anyway. What makes betrayal so painful is not only the act itself, but the confusion that follows. The mind struggles to understand how trust could dissolve so easily. Questions repeat endlessly. Why would someone choose self-interest over loyalty? Why would they cross a line they once respected? Why would they risk destroying something meaningful for something temporary? The answer is rarely hatred. In most cases, betrayal is not driven by cruelty or malice. It is driven by psychology. Internal pressure, emotional conflict, fear, and self-justification quietly shape decisions long before betrayal ever becomes visible. This story is not told to excuse betrayal or defend it. It is told to understand it, because when behavior is understood, it stops feeling random. And when patterns become visible, they become easier to recognize before they cause damage. Betrayal begins with internal conflict. Most betrayals do not start with action. They start with tension. Long before a boundary is crossed, something inside the person begins to pull in opposite directions. Values collide with desire. Loyalty clashes with self-preservation. The mind becomes a battleground between who someone believes they are and what they want in that moment. As pressure builds, discomfort grows. The longer the conflict remains unresolved, the more the mind searches for relief. Betrayal becomes one of the fastest ways to release that tension, even if it creates guilt afterward. In that moment, the relief feels more immediate than the consequences. People rarely betray because they want to hurt someone else. They betray because they want to escape something inside themselves. An emotion they don't know how to face. A fear they don't want to admit. A pressure they don't know how to carry. Self-justification and moral licensing. The human mind is remarkably skilled at protecting its self-image. Most people do not see themselves as villains in their own story, and before betraying someone, they often build a mental case to prove they are still a good person. Justifications appear quietly. They tell themselves they had no choice, that circumstances forced their hand, that anyone else would have done the same thing. Sometimes they convince themselves they deserve it, that they have suffered enough to earn this exception. This process is known as moral licensing. Once the mind feels justified, boundaries soften, rules become flexible. Actions that once felt unthinkable suddenly feel reasonable. Betrayal becomes acceptable not because it is right, but because it feels earned. By the time the action happens, the decision feels emotionally settled. The real betrayal often occurs long before anyone else notices. Emotional disconnection comes before betrayal. Betrayal rarely occurs when emotional connection is strong. Distance always comes first. Communication becomes shallow. Empathy weakens. Small resentments go unspoken and unresolved. What once felt close begins to feel familiar but hollow. As emotional bonds weaken, the psychological cost of betrayal drops. It becomes easier to act against someone who feels less emotionally present in your mind. When someone feels distant, their pain feels abstract. Their reactions feel theoretical. The human brain finds it easier to cross boundaries when the emotional weight is reduced. Disconnection itself is not the betrayal. It is the warning sign. It is the stage where repair is still possible, but only if it is recognized and addressed. When distance is ignored, betrayal becomes more likely, not because people change suddenly, but because emotional restraint fades quietly. Opportunity reveals pressure points. People often say betrayal reveals character, but that is only part of the truth. In many cases, opportunity reveals pressure points. When temptation appears alongside low accountability, morals are tested in ways people never expected. Not everyone fails these tests, but many discover limits they did not know they had. Betrayal becomes more likely when rewards feel immediate and consequences feel distant. The brain discounts future consequences in favor of present relief or gain. Distance weakens restraint. When consequences feel abstract, the emotional weight of loyalty decreases. Betrayal does not always come from bad intentions. Sometimes it comes from poorly managed temptation combined with underestimated consequences. Fear and self-preservation. Fear is one of the strongest psychological drivers of betrayal. Fear of loss, fear of being replaced, fear of falling behind, fear of being exposed, abandoned, or left without support. When fear activates survival instincts, loyalty often becomes secondary. The brain prioritizes protection over principles. In moments of perceived threat, betrayal can feel like self-defense. The person is not thinking about trust or long-term damage. They are thinking about immediate safety, control, or escape. This does not make betrayal acceptable, but it explains why it happens even among people who value loyalty. Fear narrows perspective. Under pressure, the mind chooses what feels necessary, not what feels noble. Comparison and resentment. Betrayal often grows quietly through comparison. When people feel inferior, overlooked, or unappreciated, resentment forms beneath the surface. They may never express it. They may not even consciously recognize it, but it shapes perception all the same. Resentment distorts reality. The person who is eventually betrayed becomes a symbol of what feels lacking. Success feels unfair. Attention feels unequal. Loyalty begins to feel one-sided. Betrayal becomes an attempt to rebalance power or restore damaged self-worth. Envy rarely announces itself openly. It hides behind politeness, silence, and compliance. But when it is left unexamined, it quietly erodes trust from the inside. Identity and role conflict. People do not exist as one identity. They shift between roles constantly. Friend, partner, employee, competitor, provider. When these roles conflict, internal fractures form. Someone may feel forced to choose between being loyal in one role and successful in another. In these moments, the mind prioritizes the role that feels most urgent or rewarding. A person may betray as a friend to succeed professionally. They may betray emotionally to protect an identity they fear losing. In these cases, betrayal is not always a loss of values. Sometimes it is a shift in identity. The person convinces themselves they are becoming someone new, even if that transformation leaves damage behind. Why betrayal feels so personal? Betrayal feels personal because trust is personal. The brain treats trust as safety. When trust is broken, the nervous system reacts as if danger has entered the environment. Stress hormones rise. Memory sharpens. Emotional pain lingers. This is why betrayal stays vivid long after other hurts fade. The pain is not only emotional, it is biological. The body remembers the violation as a threat, even when the mind tries to move on. Understanding this helps separate the act from your worth. Betrayal does not mean you were naive, weak, or unworthy. It means trust was given, and trust always carries risk. Conclusion. Understanding without hardening. Betrayal is not random. It follows psychological patterns shaped by fear, desire, opportunity, resentment, and justification. Understanding these patterns does not mean expecting betrayal from everyone.